then we can move over to the general Q&A session. And so everyone feel free to use the chat and the Q&A to ask anything you might wonder to any of the speakers or to us, whatever you may wonder.
Maybe I can insert a thing there, Lovisa. This is Hans,
yes, of course, Hans.
the chairman of the SACC chamber. We have an event this year in November 16, the Green Connections, in cooperation with the Norwegian Chamber in LA and the Finnish Chamber also in LA. And you are welcome to join that conference too. That will be something like 3 hours or 3.5 hours, and mark the date, November 16.
All right, yes, thank you, Hans. And some more discussion questions for all of you speakers. How do you think international cooperation or collaboration can play a role in advancing improvements on the grid and sustainability and renewable energy overall, like global collaboration? So who wants to start? Venus.
Sure. I was listening to the Inolet presentation, learning about that battery storage. We are always keeping our eyes open and listening in what's the latest and greatest technology and how we could incorporate. The one thing, how we could globally come together, and it's a massive ask, but I'm just still going to throw it out there, is standardization. It's such a massive uphill battle, be it battery storage or be it chargers, integrating with the utility. It's at least in California, it feels like it's wild, wild west. And the certifications are getting changed every few months. So from developer perspective, first, we can't keep up. Second, it's a revolving door of lack of standardization. So that's, if there is an international community that says, I think Europe has come together, US is almost there, like we're only going to use one charging plug, are we only going to have this one UL certification for all battery storage? That would make our life so much easier and would add the speed we need for deployment. So that would be one thing we could, as an international community, come together and reach that agreement.
Great answer. Thank you very much. And Konstantin, do you have anything to add to that?
We're currently benefiting from this international efforts. Just to give an example, the government of Sweden is promoting electrification quite actively, and we are receiving a delegation of Swedish business people on the 1st of June visiting our lab, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to meet some of the larger companies from Sweden and Scandinavia in general, and for them to get certain exposure to new technologies that are developed. Not many governments are doing this work, and I just want to say how grateful we are, and I think it's going to help many companies, not only us. Recently there were efforts in France and some other governments in Europe doing the same, and I think this is very helpful. There is a negative example in the UK where a lot of projects that are targeting manufacturing of battery cells are struggling, as some of you might know, and every week they have a debate who can help them, if not the government, then maybe someone else. Here, international cooperation would be really something that can potentially give a lifeline to those projects and ideas. And Europe is clearly losing compared to IRA in the US. Just lately, there were some efforts to support battery capacity construction and development of new technologies, they're coming at a significant delay, and only after seeing a strong threat of losing a lot of investment. Really, a lot can be done in cross-national, international cooperation.
Good.
All right, thank you, Sean. Yes, sorry.
I can also add a little bit to that. I think the energy markets are surprisingly insular when you look across different regions, and the reason for that is it's very much driven by legislation. So if you have a good product for a certain market, it's not necessarily a good product market fit for another market in different under different regulatory sort of frameworks. In our case, we are a very smart startup, but we have the sort of luxury to be international from day one, because I'm based out of here and the company is actually Swedish, out of Sweden. So we've been able to get a much broader perspective by understanding what are the products that are being developed that have been tailored for product market fit, given the regulatory landscape in different states in the US, and what are we experiencing in Europe. And I think in the end, the regulators decide what products are needed and what approach you need to sort of make a dent. So I think it's critical to look around and learn.
Yes, thank you, everyone. So there are a few questions from the audience. First, to emulate, are you doing multi-market optimization across different market options? And if so, what kind of time steps? And do you foresee it getting really dynamic, hopping across different markets?
Yes, we are. So we don't actually do the trading ourselves. So we integrate into the trading platforms of the balance responsible parties, and our platform facilitates value stacking and simultaneous trading across different markets. We work, for frequency regulation markets, it's down to second level, but then you need a very specific type of chargers and batteries. And then obviously for intraday markets or for services to DSOs, the time requirements are not as stringent.
All right, thank you. Another question is, how can the US learn from Europe to increase the amount of electrical vehicles?
I can answer a little bit of that. I definitely envy the European market big time, because we have challenges with the EV charging utilization here. One answer I would say, not everybody wants to hear it, but it's the reality. In US, we are a divided nation. Climate change shouldn't be a political issue, but it is a political issue. So where I'm going with this is having a nationwide acceptance of EVs is not there yet. And there are progressive states, like always, California, New York, they're leading the pack, and then hopefully the rest of the states would follow. The big thing I want to identify is that climate change is not a political issue, but it has become a political issue in the US. So we could learn something from Europe directly, like, okay, we all made up our mind that it's not a political issue and we all gonna go in the same direction and set the targets, set aggressive targets. And in Europe, they are exceeding those EV targets by leaps and bounds. The second thing I was thinking about EVs is that what we could learn from Europe, I actually lost my chain of thought, but it was mostly that the political environment is driving a lot of the narrative in US, and it shouldn't, and we should follow Europe's suit. So I'll actually pause there and see if our other esteemed panelists have some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, Konstantin, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm a big believer in the market force, and unless electric vehicles are produced at a lower cost and they're sold at a lower price, it wouldn't work. Politically, you can drive this agenda as long as as there is a willingness of taxpayers to absorb the bill for subsidizing of electric vehicle sales. But at the end, if the world cannot figure out how to produce them cost competitive with ICE, it will not happen. So technology development is probably the key, or one of those important keys in further electrification.
Konstantin, one point to that is when we started our company, that used to be the big question we would usually get from investors, that why would, especially fast food restaurants being in disadvantaged and low income communities, how would you get EV drivers that are mostly affluent coming into those fast food restaurants? What's happened in the last 2 years is exactly to your point, that affordability has now beginning to take shape. And over the next few years, including actually right now too, more of the affordable models are being deployed or coming out in the market. I think last I counted, it was 30 different 30 different car models that were going to be less than $30,000 US. And that is a key for that mass adoption, that we have to go get to that inflection point. And we're getting there now. We're beginning to see that.
Very good. Very good.
And Sean, who's operating in both Europe and America, what do you think about that?
I just want to piggyback on what I think money talks. In Sweden, you have a very high adoption rate not because people are more or less left-leaning than many parts of US, which may be the case politically speaking. But I think most people opt for electric vehicles simply because it's a cheaper solution. A liter of gas in Sweden costs far more than in the US. Even when the electricity prices were skyrocketing, it was still cheaper to buy and operate an EV compared to buying and operating a gas car. So I think, again, it comes down to regulators and how things are taxed and priced and incentivized.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Another question is how you believe that the COVID-19 pandemic has influenced the progress and growth of renewable energy adaptation and improvement of the grid overall.
Go ahead, Sean. It looks like you got an answer.
Well, this is I haven't researched into the topic, but I know that COVID-19 there was an abundance of money that was just pumped out, and a lot of that money was funneled speculatively to Tesla and other clean stocks, and that obviously became hip. It became like the next big thing, and I think that may have triggered us or created like an inflection point where there is an enormous amount of buzz around the things that you guys are doing and the space that we're in. So I think just a gut feeling without having done any research on the topic, but I feel like it created a lot of cheap money. The money got funneled into we're human beings. We're not always rational. It just got funneled into a lot of these Tesla stocks and renewable stocks, and that may have created a sort of a permanent shift. But it's just a hypothesis.
I feel like we had a little bit of the opposite effect. Macro scale, absolutely correct, Sean. Micro scale, it slowed down the EV adoption in US even more because people were just not driving. So I know when we were looking to underwrite projects, some of the data we would use as proxy data or comparison analysis, there wasn't anything available. It would be the COVID years, 19, 20, 21, and that had extremely low utilization, charger utilization. And so the decisions couldn't be made in a productive way because the data wasn't representative of normal times. So at micro level, we saw a negative effect on EV charging and EVs in the US.
And yeah, maybe I will also add a point. I believe there was a positive contribution of COVID to wider use of electric vehicles, and it happened due to the lockdowns that lasted in some places during more than a year, in some places 1.5, some even 2 years, where sales of conventional ICE engine vehicles dropped significantly. So manufacturing of cars was almost stopped. Many producers had to find a solution. Obviously, they went to the governments and asked for help. And once your production is idle, it is much easier to take a decision about switching future capacity expansion or establishment of a new site if you need a bailout by the government. And certainly lawmakers use the momentum, and they put certain conditions to the future EV companies. In the past, they used to be ICE engine manufacturers. Even the skeptics were quickly convinced by the amounts of help that were offered by the governments, and that was, I think, an excellent momentum for this push. And even in fact, they were probably forced in some cases to adapt electric vehicle production programs. And now it will be very difficult to turn it back, simply because all these projects are on the road, they're financed, they've been built, and the proliferation is just happening. I think it was a big turning point. It's always easier to start when things are very bad. Start something new and different.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Another discussion question. What have you experienced as your biggest challenges and potential risks while developing your businesses?
I can list, we're a startup, I can list 20 every day. But the biggest risk I see it is there's a lot of hype, and like Sean and Konstantin mentioned, that due to that hype, a lot of funding went out and a lot of support. The reality on the ground is starkly different. It's a stark comparison. I'm speaking strictly from US perspective here, not international. Like I said, I envy European countries, they're way ahead of us. But the reality on the ground is different, because I see that every day with our operations team, our deployment team. There is a mismatch between the federal policy, state and local policy. What I mean by that is when we are deploying battery storage and chargers, there's lack of standardization. Every city has a different permitting review. Every utility has a different process, and that's just within the state of California. So I haven't even expanded it to other states, and that has been my biggest challenge, that we are trying to scale the company, yet at the policy level, at the local policy level, we haven't had that trickle down effect of, yes, you need to turn the permits around in 30 days. Yes, you have to review the battery storage like within these parameters. So that has been my challenge, but I'm beginning to see a change, because one thing is that is the eternal optimism in the cities. They want to see clean energy projects. They want to move forward with them. So appealing to that core has helped us get these projects done. And that, like I said, it has been with those challenges, but I still think at the core of it, we're moving a lot faster with clean energy projects. I'll turn it over to other folks.
Thank you. What about you, Konstantin?
We see as a threat future saturation of the market. It's probably not possible that 100% of e-mobility will be converted or it will be 100% e-mobility 10 years from now. There will be still some conventional energy used in certain applications and some cases. So at the point there will be significant capacity built, and manufacturers will start competing on prices. And technology can be a differentiation unless it will simply become one more industry that is protected by the government with trade barriers, import duties, and artificial protection. So that would be a challenge for us, because our technology is getting ready now. This year, next year, we will have a few more chemistries ready for commercialization. If there will be slowdown of new adoptions or further increase of demand, that will be a challenge for the industry. And on one side, you can expect companies to look at new technologies as an opportunity to really differentiate and compete. On another side, people might become more cautious, and that's for us one of the biggest threats, apart from standard business topics like raw material access and non-availability of domestic raw material production in Europe.
Thank you. And Sean, do you want to add anything? Oops, Sean, I think you're muted. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can I share my screen again for a second? I think we starting to touch on some really interesting and pretty critical topics here. So this is a graphic that shows where clean energy technologies are manufactured. So you have offshore wind, onshore wind, solar. We talked a lot about electric vehicles. So for the battery, you have batteries for that. You have anodes, cathodes, and then you have the electric cars themselves. And it's totally dominated by China. It's totally, we talked today, we spent most of our time talking about what's happening in the US, what's happening in Europe. The fact of the matter is that the epicenter of the green revolution is not where we are. It's in China. And it's based on decisions that was made there maybe 10, 12 years ago on which direction to move, and it came top down. I think in general, we have a lot of catching up to do. And if you look at the overall infrastructure and value chain for executing on the hardware needed to complete the energy transition, we totally dependent on what's happening in China and APAC in general, but China specifically. So, I'm a big believer of this Inflation Reduction Act. I think that's the type of moves that are needed, bold moves that are needed to sort of short circuit this thing. But I also think that strategically, where we're sitting with the situation right now, there will probably be attempts at looking at other technologies. It could be nuclear. Different types of nuclear is definitely going to come up. Fuel cells may come up. But this is a little uncomfortable strategic seat that we're in the West.
Can I add one more thing, Sean? My mind was completely blown. I read this article a month ago. I was looking up when you were talking. China is deploying 1,200 gigawatts, not megawatts, gigawatts of renewable energy. And their goal was to get it done in 10 years, exact 3 years before their due date. That is insane.
Yeah. I guess in classic terms, it's called market intervention.
Exactly. I just, it's amazing at the pace they're deploying renewable energy. Yeah, very impressed with their policy and their deployment.
They say that the mother of innovation is actually desperation. And once you start moving at a very fast pace, there's going to be thousands of problems that need to be solved. And then innovation happens because you got to solve it. And they've triggered these very rapid movements. And problems arise, innovation is needed, and it happens there.
Just to give a perspective, I started my career at a nuclear power plant close to San Diego. which is one of the large ones, a baseload power plant in Southern California. It was 2,000 megawatt power plant. That the number they used to say was it would provide electricity for 500,000 homes. That's 2,000 megawatts. China is deploying 180 gigawatts. That's 180,000 megawatts every year. And that is equivalent of hundreds of nuclear power plants. So that's why I'm saying the scale is so massive. You're absolutely correct, Sean. We're talking US and Europe. The real revolution is actually taking place in China.
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, it's truly amazing. So I think we can fit one last question in, if you can, maybe short answers. So question from the chat. How green is the world going to be by 2030 with your technology? If you have a short answer. Sean, do you want to start?
We're going to need a lot of different technologies. Ours is a little minuscule part of the problem that we're trying to solve, but we're going to need a lot of different innovators coming in. You got to remember that the energy market is probably, along the banking industry, the most risk-averse industries in the world. Nobody ever thanked their energy company because they got more electricity or better electricity. It's always been about minimizing risks to make sure that everything is over-dimensioned, so that you don't end up with your customers complaining about your service. You never got a positive feedback. In this environment, it's gonna get flipped upside down. And for that to actually happen at the pace that is needed, you're gonna need hundreds and hundreds and thousands of different startups. I think the innovation will come from the startups, because the industry itself isn't really wired to be innovative, and we're trying to address a small part of it.
Thank you very much. And Konstantin, what about you?
We are fully convinced with our technology, this world 10 years from now or 7 years from now will be greener in general, and more consumers will use e-mobility. We'll see it not only as a luxury car. We will not use it for seldom or selective models of vehicles here and there. There will be e-flights, and we are big believers in eVTOLs and urban air mobility. We will see it perhaps 3-4 years from now in major large cities, and there will be surprising applications, and I think people will live better and happier using our tech.
Yes, thank you. And Venus, lastly, you can finish this.
Yeah, we actually did this study because that is in the fabric of our startup. How are we offsetting that carbon dioxide and our GHG emissions? So I have that number memorized, and that is 963 metric tons carbon dioxide offset every year per site. And if we're looking at 2030 as our goal, I just did the math, we're looking at about 500,000 metric tons carbon dioxide offset, which is still minuscule, but this is the way we are calculating our impact and our dent in that climate change worries, I would say.
All right, thank you very much. And now our time is soon up. So I would like, on behalf of all the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce here in San Diego, express my gratitude to all the speakers and participants who's been here with us today. Your presence and engagement is truly remarkable and very inspiring. And I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say that. So thank you all for being part of this very important discussion and for sharing your work today. And I wish you all the best in the future. And yes, I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you, Lovisa.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.